In 1972, a small planning team inside Royal Dutch Shell wrote down a future almost nobody believed, a world where the price of oil suddenly quadrupled. Their own executives thought it was paranoid. 14 months later, it happened. When the 1973 oil embargo hit, Shell wasn't caught flat. They'd already rehearsed the world they didn't expect, so their managers knew the moves before the crisis named them. Shell went into that decade as one of the weakest of the major oil companies and came out one of the strongest. That's scenario planning, not fortune-telling. A way to make real decisions when you honestly can't know what's coming. And despite the consultant price tag it usually carries, you can run a version of it yourself, with 2 questions and a square of paper. Most of us do the opposite of what Shell did. Faced with an uncertain future, we quietly pick one version of it. Usually, next year looks a lot like this year. And we bet everything on that one guess. It feels like realism. It's actually a single point of failure. Back in the first module, we drew the cone of plausibility, the whole spread of futures that could believably happen. A single forecast is just one line drawn through the middle of that cone. Scenario planning does something sturdier. It drops a handful of specific points across the spread, so you're not staking your whole future on the line in the middle being right. So here's the method, in plain language. No software, no offsite, no facilitator with a flip chart, 2 questions, 4 boxes, and a worked example built around something you very likely drank this morning. Every future runs on dozens of forces at once. Back in Module 2, we sorted them with steep, social, technological, economic, environmental, political. The trap is treating all of them as equally important. Most of them either barely move your decision, or they're predictable enough that you can just plan around them. Scenario planning ignores almost all of them and hunts for just 2. The 2 forces that are both high stakes. They genuinely change your decision and genuinely uncertain. Nobody can tell you how they'll land. High impact, high uncertainty. Find those 2 and you've found the hinges the whole future swings on. Now you cross them, draw a square. One uncertainty runs up the side from low to high. The other runs along the bottom. That gives you 4 boxes, and each box is a different world where those 2 forces landed in a different combination. The point isn't that one box is right, it's that all 4 are plausible, and they're plausible at the same time. Each world has to hold together on its own, a place you could actually wake up in, not a wish or a nightmare, and you name them. A scenario with a name is a scenario you can remember, argue about, and spot when it starts showing up in the news. An unnamed scenario evaporates the moment the meeting ends. Let's build a real one. Take the coffee in that cup and ask what it looks like by 2040. Dozens of forces touch it, but 2 of them are the hinges. 1. How hard does climate hit the Arabica Belt, the high-altitude land where the good beans grow? Manageable at one end, severe at the other. 2. Does the industry adapt fast or stall? Fast means new growing regions, hardier Robusta beans, shade cover, frost-resistant varieties. Stall means everyone waits and hopes. Cross those 2. Climate mild to severe, industry adapts or stalls, and the square fills with 4 very different mornings. Box 1. Mild climate and fast adaptation. Coffee stays roughly the drink it is now. Your $5 latte holds. Call it steady cup. Box 2. Severe climate but fast adaptation. The map of coffee redraws itself. East African highlands and new altitudes carry more of the load, Robusta fills the gap, and your cup survives. But it tastes different and costs more. Call that one the Great Migration. Box 3. Mild climate but a stalled industry. You dodged the worst and got complacent. Fine for now, brittle to the next shock. Borrowed time. And Box 4. Severe climate with no adaptation. Arabica becomes a luxury. Prices spike, your daily cup turns into an occasional treat, and the smallholder farmers in Ethiopia and Kenya who depend on those beans get hit hardest of all. The luxury bean. And here's why this isn't a parlor game. One corner of that square has already partly happened. On July 20th, 2021, a hard frost hit Minas Gerais, Brazil's Arabica heartland, the worst in 25 years. It wiped out close to a fifth of the crop. Within 2 days, Arabica futures jumped almost 11% to a 6-year high and kept climbing past $2 a pound. By late 2025, drought pushed them to all-time records near $4. That's the luxury bean corner, knocking on the door for one season. Which is exactly why the growers and buyers who live closest to that risk, in Brazil, in Ethiopia, in Kenya, are the ones quietly running these squares already. They're not predicting which world wins. They're getting ready to recognize whichever one shows up. Now, the part everyone gets wrong. You don't build 4 worlds to pick the winner. You build them to find the moves that look smart in more than one of them. That's the whole trick. Lay your options across all 4 boxes and watch which ones survive everywhere. That's what Shell actually did in 1972. They didn't bet the company on the oil shock arriving. They asked a quieter question. What would we want to have already done, no matter which world we landed in? And they found decisions that held up across all of them. When the shock came, those decisions were just sitting there, ready. So the payoff was never a prediction. It's 4 memories of the future. When the real one finally shows up, and it always shows up wearing one of the faces you sketched, you recognize it instead of freezing. If you want one thing to watch for coffee specifically, the Arabica futures price and Brazil's crop report each July. They tell you which corner of the square the world is drifting toward. And those moves that work in every box, they have a name, no regret moves, and they get their own episode later in this course. Pierre Wack, the man who built Shell's scenarios, said the goal was never to get the future right. It was to change the way the decision-makers saw, so the future couldn't ambush them. The 4 boxes aren't predictions you grade later and feel clever about. They're a way of looking that makes you harder to surprise. So here's the one to drop in the comments. Forget coffee. What's the single biggest unpredictable hinge in your own work or life right now? The one force that's both high stakes and genuinely unsettled. The one you keep flinching away from because you can't call which way it goes. Put that one below. Find its partner on your own, and you've got the 2 sides of your square. You can't predict which world you'll wake up in. You can make sure you've already visited all of them. Next time, we flip the whole thing around. Instead of mapping the futures that might happen to you, we start from the one future you actually want and work backwards to the first move you'd have to make on Monday.